Hello, May candidates. We're about 4 to 5 weeks away from your scheduled exam. So it's a very critical point. Your margin of error is now much smaller than it would have been, say, 3 months ago. So we really have to do things right in this final period. And here's what I think is the proper approach leading into the exam. The ideal training schedule continues to be as follows. So first of all, you want to review your notes for a chapter, especially the wordy components of those chapters, because I think it's the wordy part that needs more retention. So the stuff that's mathy, and let me just show you what I mean. So let me just pick one chapter, for example. This would be from level 1, chapter 3.1. And you can see that there's the wordy content, but at the same time there's the analytical content. For example, you could see the frameworks and the moving parts. Now these frameworks, the ones with the moving parts, you can actually use logic to arrive at the right answer. But for the wordy components, the CFA Institute is very specific with respect to the responses they're looking for. So even though in practice there might be something that you've seen that would fit that question, the grading key is only looking for things through the curriculum. So with these wordy components, you either know what they're looking for or you don't. And that's why I always recommend, before doing questions for a chapter, just spend about 15 to 20 minutes just going through the entire chapter and just basically reviewing the core components. So for example, what is the role of financial reporting? So if you ask this to an analyst, you can get 15 different responses with respect to what the role of financial reporting is. But the CFA Institute is only looking for 3 specific ones because those are the ones that were included in the curriculum. And unless you've reviewed your notes, you either know what those 3 are or you don't. So after you spend that 15 to 20 minutes reviewing your notes for a chapter, then you can go and attempt the high priority questions that have been assigned for that chapter. Now all of you have this practice question list which I've distributed. And basically what I've done already is I've gone through all the CFA chapters and I've handpicked the questions which I believe have a high return on time. These are questions that are either directly linked to an LOS, which means they're examinable, or they're bite-sized enough where a similar question can appear on the exam. So I've plowed the snow ahead of you already, so the road is clear. You just need to follow that path. And what I mean by that is just focus your efforts on doing these questions from the curriculum. And by the way, the curriculum is the exact same source that the CFA examiners will be looking at when they construct their exam. So my logic is, why don't we master the same set of questions that your examiners are looking at right now probably? Well, actually, in real life, the May exam has already been predetermined, but I'm sure they've seen the same questions as you're looking at right now when they formulated that exam. Now, even after you have attempted all the questions, go back and redo the ones that you may have flagged. So going back to the practice questions, ladies and gentlemen, just because you got a question right doesn't mean that's it, it's done and over with. So it's not a binary thing. Sometimes you could get a question right after struggling with it for about 10 minutes maybe. Or maybe you got the answer correctly just out of chance or fluke. So these are the questions, the ones that gave you a hard time. These are the ones that you probably want to flag. So I'm just going to pick some random questions I'm going to assume that I had a hard time with. And the point I'm trying to demonstrate here is, even after I go through the entire practice question list, I'm going to come back and I'm going to go and redo the ones that I had previously flagged, so that my knowledge of them can actually become much more entrenched. So again, don't think of learning as binary. You either know it or you don't. Learning is actually a spectrum. It's a matter of degree. So what we want to do during our second passage is maybe we want to go from understanding 60% of the material in this question to maybe understanding 80 or even 90% of what just happened. Now the other beauty with revisiting these questions is that now you're going to become faster and faster in doing these questions. So by repeatedly going over the same number of questions, you're going to get more accurate because you're going to know what you're doing, and you're going to get faster. Now, the other thing I have highlighted here is this equation. Now, on the surface, these equations may seem to be equal. 1,000 times 3 should be equal to 3,000 times 1. Now, first of all, let me tell you where this is coming from. Doing 1,000 questions 3 times over is far more effective than doing 3,000 questions, but only getting to do it once. And again, I use this multi-layering strategy to learn, right? So it's like a language. For me to learn a language, you have to repeat the same phrases over and over again, and that's how you become fluent. And it's the same logic here. The CFA material is a new language for a lot of us because we haven't seen this material before. So in order to become fluent, you need a lot of repetition, and that's why I've only handpicked a finite set of questions. In other words, I don't advocate Q banks or anything. I just say, let's just go to the CFA book, pick the highest return on time questions from there, and just repeatedly going over them. And that's how you're going to remember. The other problem with doing like thousands and thousands of questions from Q banks and ecosystems is that you'll be spread out so thin that you're not going to remember a thing from any of these questions, right? So again, I advocate repeatedly going over the same set of assigned questions. And as I said before, third-party Q banks, not a big fan because someone else is guessing as to what would be tested, and that's what a Q bank is. I've been on that side. I've been on the side where I had to construct questions for a Q bank. And literally, you're just sitting there trying to guess what to test, right? I mean, I know the materials from the curriculum, but who knows what your examiner is thinking, right? And again, your best use of time is just using the same source that your examiner is using, which is the CFA curriculum. But again, I caution you, that doesn't mean you have to do every blue box or every end-of-chapter question in the curriculum. Only do the ones that I've sort of singled out here. I was a professor before. I was an MBA prof. I've constructed hundreds of exams, graded thousands of papers. So I know a little bit about exam formatting. And that's why I've sort of used these filters in order to select only the best questions from the curriculum. And the other thing, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be frank, for a lot of you who work full-time, have all these responsibilities, your time is very limited. So yes, in theory, it'd be amazing if you could do 10,000 questions, each one 3 times over. That's not very realistic. And that's what this does. Just like a portfolio manager picks the best stocks out of the whole stock listings and invests all the portfolio there, we're going to do the same thing. So we look at the CFA curriculum universe, similar to all the stocks that are available. But what we're going to do is we're not just going to pick all the stocks that are available. We're just going to pick the ones with the highest return potential. And that's exactly what I've done here. I've picked the questions with the highest point potential. Now, doubt and anxiety is very common at this stage. I've been through it myself when I was a candidate, especially in the final few weeks. So it's very common, and it's a good sign because it shows that you appreciate the challenge that's ahead of you. So there should be this constant cloud over your head, right? I mean, if I see you smiling in these last 4 weeks, I'll know something's up. Something's not right, right? So you should feel the burden, but you got to manage it. You got to harness that energy. You can't be crushed by the anxiety. You got to harness that energy and say, I got to stick to the game plan. I got to go through these questions and then redo them once I've gone through it once. The other thing you want to do, and this is going to help you manage doubt and anxiety, is you need to track your progress in terms of hours, not chapters. Ladies and gentlemen, some chapters take longer than others, right? Like, so you got some quant chapters or derivative chapters that'll take way longer. So you can't just take a calculator and use the division function. In other words, let's say there's 60 chapters and you divide it by number of weeks left. That's very amateur, right? So again, setting your sort of thresholds in terms of how many chapters you have to cover a week, it is very ineffective. It is very discouraging because oftentimes people don't meet those deadlines, right? Instead, what I recommend, and again, that all this comes from experience, is just tell yourself, did you put in 20 hours this week? That's all you got to aim for. So again, don't track your progress by chapters. Track it in terms of hours. And I know, again, from experience, if you average 20 hours a week and at the same time you have the last week off work, so you can actually put in close to at least 40 hours that week, if not 50, you will cross the finish line. Now, on an end note, just a couple of things. Again, I keep holding study group sessions in Toronto. Here are the details. We only have 2 more study group sessions left, and then it's going to be the mock. I'll talk about that in a sec. So Saturday, 22nd, 29, 9 to 5, I'll be on the 3rd floor. Now you know what I look like, right? And on May 6th, also Saturday, I will release the mock. So if you live in the Toronto area, this will be, I mean, it's still computer-based, but I will ask you to converge at a center. Actually, it will be at the same location here, right? So you bring your laptop, whatever, and then you will have access to my mock. And then we can do the real-life simulation. So things like, even things like commuting. So if you don't do that in your simulation on an exam day, something as simple as commuting or trying to find parking can throw you off. It's happened before, right? So you got to go through the whole motion. And so the mock that I'm going to release on May 6th, in addition to the ones available on the CFA website, are all the ones that you need in order to get calibrated for the CFA exam. If you attempt any more, then you risk getting spread thin. So this goes in line with what I said about doing all those Q-Bank or extra questions. Again, on paper, it sounds amazing if you could do 10,000 questions. But the reality is, A, no one has that amount of time. And B, even if you did have that time, the mental capacity is not infinite. It's very finite, in fact. So what you want to do is you want to sort of narrow down the amount of material that you have to retain and just repeatedly go over that stuff. So once again, rather than you guys doing 9 mocks, or I should say, let's say 6 mocks, I'd rather you guys did 3 mocks, but you went over it twice. So the more we stick to this strategy, I think the better the outcome will be. That has been the case in the past. So if you have any questions, please let me know.